사랑하는 시청자 여러분 안녕하세요. 서울스피커스뷰로의 알렉스입니다. 지금 우리가 살고 있는 세계는 어떻게 설명할 수 있을까요? 전쟁, 관세폭탄, 흔들리는 동맹, 그리고 깊어지는 사회적 고립. 단순한 혼란처럼 보이지만 오늘 모신 분은 이것을 구조적 전환이라고 말합니다. 오늘 게스트는 노리나 허츠 영국 런던대 세계번역연구소 명예교수입니다. 허츠 교수는 제17차 이데일리 세계 전략포럼의 기조연사로 참석하셨는데요. 무대에서 못한 이야기 지금 바로 들어보시죠. So thank you for joining us today, Professor Hertz. It's a truly honor to have you today. We are looking forward to this conversation, really.
I'm very much looking forward to it too. I'm so delighted to be here in Korea.
I have a lot of things to ask you. Before we dive in, for those who in our audience who were less familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what continued to drive your work as an economist, author, and thinker?
I am an economist, but I'm an economist who has always focused at the intersection of economics, politics, technology, society. So I'm an economist who believes that we can't really answer questions about how we should grow, how we should innovate, how we can be more profitable unless we're thinking about history, people, culture, institutions, technological change as well. And I both have an academic career, I'm a professor in the United Kingdom, I have written a number of best-selling books, and also I sit on the boards of 3 big multinational American companies, Warner Music Group, Mattel, and WorkHuman.
Let's just start with your book first. Your landmark book, The Lonely Century, challenges the way people think about the loneliness, framing it not simply as some kind of personal experience, but as a social and political forces. So what forced to lead to that kind of insights? And when you look at the world today, do you think that this problem has become more accurate since your first book is published?
So I began thinking about this whole subject of loneliness for 3 reasons. First, it was my students at university. More and more of them were coming to me and they were saying to me, I'm feeling really lonely. And this wasn't something I had seen at this scale a decade ago. So I thought, what is going on here? Then I had bought a voice-enabled assistant at home, an Alexa, and I started observing my own interaction with this device that is in my kitchen. And I realized I was developing a sort of affection, attachment to this machine. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then in my academic research, I was looking at the rise of populism across the globe, of leaders like Donald Trump in America or Marine Le Pen in France. And I know that populism is something that you have experienced in here in Korea in recent times as well. I wanted to understand, why were people voting for these political leaders? And what I realized was that what these 3 things, my students, my device in my kitchen, and the rise of populism had in common was that loneliness was the force that was shaping them all. Students were lonely because they were spending all their time on social media and they were no longer interacting with each other in real life. People were feeling lonely, and so companies were developing a whole economy of products to meet that need, what I came to call the loneliness economy. And people were feeling lonely, not only lonely because they didn't have so many friends, but lonely because they had stopped trusting in governments and institutions, lonely because they felt that politicians and political parties were no longer listening to them or seeing them or hearing them. And these forces that I identified a few years ago, if anything, have accelerated. We are living today in the loneliest century on record, and the consequences are personal, for sure. We know that loneliness is as bad for our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, but also political and social, because a lonely society is a society in which we do not trust each other, in which we do not believe in each other, and in which we do not have faith that our politicians will be there for us when times are tough. And for any government or any company, having lonely citizens or lonely employees is very bad news. because lonely citizens will never support the centrist politicians. They will always be attracted to the politicians at the extremes. And in the workplace, we know that lonely employees are less engaged, more likely to leave the company, less motivated and less productive. So loneliness is bad for business, bad for society, and bad for democracy.
So let's go to the second question. Do you describe current global movement not as a chaos, but a deeper structure transition? So away from the globalization, toward the world where the power, security, and national interests dominate. So what does the shift feel like on the ground for the ordinary people or businesses?
I think it's important to recognize that what we are witnessing today is not actually brand new. That if we look over the past decade, we have seen a progressive backlash against globalization. Witnessed, for example, even if you think back to President Biden's term, he did not reverse many of the protectionist measures that President Trump put into place in his first term. So this American kind of anti-globalization ethos has actually been going on now for over a decade. If we look at trade barriers and trade restrictions globally, this has been on an increasing path for the past decade. So this environment in which globalization is viewed as not the ideal anymore is something that's been happening for a considerable time. And at the same time, of course, the world is feeling more dangerous today than it has been for a considerable time. I mean, as we're doing this interview, we still have war raging in Europe between Ukraine and Russia. The Middle East is hopefully, becoming more peaceful as we do the interview, but it has been a difficult few months in the Middle East. And these crises that are going on in Europe, in the Middle East, may seem far away from here in Korea. But of course, across Asia, across the world, we're all facing the repercussions, for example, of energy prices, impacting the world at large, or just this general sense of anxiety people feel across the world right now because they're worried about what they read in the newspapers. They're worried about what they see on their social media. How this is impacting businesses and how this is impacting ordinary people. Well, ordinary people are feeling very anxious right now. If you look at survey data across the world, including here in Korea, people are feeling anxious. They're feeling worried about themselves, their children, about the future. With, of course, artificial intelligence in many countries creating a new form of anxiety. What will happen to our jobs? What will happen to our children's jobs? What should they do? So a new sense of anxiety. So business leaders and political leaders need to recognize this. This is real, and this is going to impact how people will consume, how people will invest, how they will choose to spend their money, and of course, how they will choose to vote. More generally, when we think about this anti-globalization sentiment or this rise in protectionism, so from business's point of view, the question is, how do we navigate this new world where suddenly there might be tariffs where there weren't tariffs? What do we need? What new relationships do we need to be creating regionally? Is there more trade that we could be doing domestically? How do we hedge so that we have operations in different countries so that if tariffs go on one, we're hedged and we can be in another? How do we create optionality? And how do we as businesses prepare for this new AI age? How do we make sure that we are the beneficiaries of this AI age, that we are leading in it? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we're not subjecting ourselves, our companies, our brands, our heritages to undue risk? What are the dangers AI could cause to our brand? What are the mistakes AI could make? How does AI impact how people think, how our employees think? Are they just going to be blindly following what the machine says and losing their own capacity to be critical and strategic? So lots that businesses need to be thinking about. And governments, of course, too. How in this new age of AI, what does it even mean to win in this new age of AI? Is winning in this new age of AI just about having big frontier models? Is it just about selling the most chips or semiconductors? Or is it also about who is going to benefit from AI's gains? How will we use AI to benefit our population? What are the red lines? What can we learn from the dangers of social media that we don't want to replicate with AI? So lots and lots in this new age, and it is a new age, that politicians, business leaders, and ordinary people need to be thinking about.
Thank you for your advice. One idea that runs through the much of your work is the danger of what you call the narrowing. The narrowing the tendency, especially in the uncertain times, to narrow our vision. Right. So I would like to listen to your opinion for the leaders in the government or in business area. So what does it mean in practical to resist that instinct and think more broadly?
So in challenging times, it's a very human instinct to put your blinkers on, to just kind of look ahead, to be not looking around because you almost can't cope. In challenging times, we need to be widening our perspective. Let me give you some concrete examples. First, and I know this is not very nunchy, we need to include in conversations actively in business different, divergent, and dissenting views from all different layers of the company and include them in our decision making.
Okay.
Why? Because in a world that's moving as fast as this, the traditional people at the top of an organization, they may not have all the answers. No one has the answers right now. So trying to get a wide perspective of views, opinions, ideas on the table is going to help a company problem solve and innovate. So that's the first idea. You need to widen your network of who you need to listen to and actually have a challenger or challengers in the room. Encourage them, incentivize them, and listen to them. Secondly, we need to think about also the makeup of our leadership teams. Often these are not diverse enough to get the multiplicity of ideas and innovation we need today. So as companies and organizations are thinking about developing their management teams, they need to be thinking, is everyone of the same age? Is everyone of the same gender? And if it is, they need to mix that up. Another thing that business leaders need to be doing more, experiment. Companies, sometimes they don't want to experiment. They're worried if you experiment and then you fail, it's a waste of money, it's embarrassing. We're now living in a world in which the most successful businesses have an agenda of experimentation at their heart. They are actively encouraging parts of their company to really go full steam ahead with experimenting. Experiment, fail. Experiment, if it's good, let's double down on that. You need to have this culture of experimentation right now when everything is fast changing and new. And the final lesson, I would counsel every business leader and everyone in a senior position especially, in times that are as challenging and fast moving as these, actively carve out time to think. It's something we often don't do. But if we don't carve out time to think, we risk being like a hamster on a wheel, constantly running, but not knowing why. If we don't carve out time to think, we risk other people setting the agenda and us just passively responding. If we don't carve out time to think, we risk not having the time ourselves to be able to imagine, to innovate, and to dream.
So finally, you will be on the stage at the Idealist Strategy Forum in Seoul. So what's the one message you most hoped Korean leaders or the audiences carry with them after your keynote?
So hope is an important word, but hope is not a lottery ticket that we sit on the sofa and clutch. Hope is a call for action. Hope is about people looking at the future with eyes wide open and thinking, this is the path we need to take. So my hope is that Koreans look at this future with excitement, with confidence that the world is looking at you as an innovator, as a country that we are looking up to in other countries, but use that power of innovation, not only when it comes to when you think about how to export to the rest of the world, but think about it too when you think about how to heal and fix your internal issues as well. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate doing this interview and being here in Seoul.
And we hope to have you again here.
I cannot wait. Thank
you.